you see, ladies and gentlemen, these weapons are not reliable. But that really, though, that's one of the downsides of flintlock firearms at this time, is they don't always work. So, okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're glad you're here today. We are the Living History staff here at the Alamo. We're going to discuss and demonstrate for you, hopefully, the firearms that would have been used here in the siege and battle of the Alamo. So they had all types of weapons here: muskets, rifles, shotguns, pistols, artillery. They had everything. The downside is you don't have enough men, is the issue. But the primary weapon you'll see used here is the smooth-bore musket. This is a military weapon. If you're in the Army at that time and they place you in the line infantry, you're going to be issued a musket. And these weapons are referred to as smooth-bore. They are not rifled. You may be asking, well, what is rifling? Well, rifling is a series of cut grooves that spiral down the bore of the rifled firearm. So they twist as they go down the barrel. What that allows is when you shoot the round lead ball, it's all round lead ball at this time, it will grab the rifling and make the ball spin, which will make the ball go straight and give us a greater range. Okay, now the most common type of rifle you'll see on the frontier is the civilian hunting rifle. It's a hunting firearm, commonly known as the long rifle. Those weapons have a range of up to 300 to 400 yards. They're very accurate. If you could see it, you should be able to hit it. And David Crockett was an excellent shot. A lot of men on the frontier were, actually. The downside and the thing is firearms at this time, and one of the downsides of these weapons is these are all muzzle loaded. Okay, the gunpowder and ball have to be driven down the barrel. Okay, and the issue with rifled weapons is because of the rifling in the bore, it's a very tight fit for the ball. It has to be a tight fit so that it can grab the rifling in order for it to spin. So it's very restrictive, and so driving the ball into a rifled weapon, you have to pound it in there, okay? And that can take some time. In fact, it can take you up to a minute to load one shot with a rifled weapon, and that is the downside of rifled firearms. They take way too long to load, and a minute of loading time is too long on the battlefield. So that's why soldiers use smooth-bore muskets, okay? Now, because of the ball is going to be a slightly less diameter than the bore, it'll be easier to drive it in. But because the ball is loose in a musket smoothbore weapon, the ball bounces down the barrel when you shoot it, which is going to make it turn. Okay, now they are effective between 50 to 75 yards, but typically after 75 yards, that ball is going to begin to turn, much like a knuckleball does in baseball. Up, down, left, right, you don't know where it's going to go. So if you hit anything beyond 75 yards with a smooth-bore musket, it's by pure luck, okay? But they're easy to load because of that loose fit. Now, a trained soldier should load his smooth-bore musket between 15 and 20 seconds. So he's going to get 3 or 4 shots a minute compared to 1 shot a minute with a rifled weapon, and that's why armies use this weapon, because we need those men loading and firing at the enemy as quick as possible. This is about speed of loading at this time. So as I mentioned, they're muzzle loaded, powder and ball have to be driven down the barrel, but these are also flintlock firearms. So you have a piece of flint held in the jaws, it strikes a piece of steel, creating a spark, firing the weapon off, but as you saw earlier, they don't always work. And the big issue of it not working would be the flint. Every time you fire the weapon, you're wearing the flint down. And the flint has to be sharp in order to create the spark. If it doesn't go off, typically a soldier would have a tool, he would nap it, strike the edge of it to flake pieces off to get a sharp edge back on it. So hopefully, Mr. Ramirez's gun will go off during the demonstration. We'll see. So, and mine may not go off also too. I don't know, we'll see. So, but they average 1 in 7 rounds of the weapon not going off. Okay? But we have to know how to load these things, and it's a 12-step procedure of loading. Okay? And so you would drill over and over to cut it down to that 15 to 20 second loading time. So that's what we're going to cover right now. So we'll have the men standing at order arms. We're going to tell them to arm. And you have other ways of carrying it. Because you're marching many miles a day, these weapons are 10 pounds, so they get a little heavy. So another way of carrying would be to support arms. So now you would have the lock resting in the crease of the elbow. It's quite comfortable, and it takes some of the weight off the hand. And some men on guard duty would carry it in this fashion. And if you're running onto the battlefield, a lot of men would grab the small of the stock as they ran on the field to get a little more support. Shoulder arms. Now, the firearm would always be loaded because you never know when the enemy is going to appear. So you would have powder and ball down that barrel and powder in the priming pan as well. If it begins to rain, you do not want water running down the barrel because if the powder gets wet, it's going to turn into an oil and it's not going to work. So to prevent that, we'll go to subcured arms. So they just swing it down. So now that the barrel is pointing down, so they're not going to get water in there. And when you now have the lock up under the arm protected as well. Shoulder arms. Now that long, short, pointy thing on the end is called the bayonet. It comes to hand, we'll tell them to arms, put, charge, bayonets. Now on the battlefield, this would be quite intimidating when you have a line of men. At least 45 would make a rank marching against you with these long, sharp bayonets. And what they're really designed for is to fend off a cavalry charge. Horses do not like long, sharp objects. And when they see those things, they're going to stop it. But if you're being attacked by the enemy line trying to load this weapon, you don't have time to load it, you had the bayonet on, and you would lunge forward at the enemy with it. Shoulder arms. Unfixed bayonets. Now we're going to go over that 12-step loading procedure, folks. Again, this is what they would drill on over and over. So you're going to tell them in to load in 12 times, load. Open, pen, handle, cartridge. Now the cartridge they have is a paper tube. It has round ball and powder all contained within it. It's there. And these are primed over. And the only way we can open this is to tear a cartridge. They would bite off the end of it, spit it out, and prime. They would pour powder into the priming pan, shut pan, and cast about. Charge cartridge. They would pour that remaining gunpowder down that barrel. And with the ball in the paper, they wad that up and stuff it into the muzzle. Now we need to drive it down to the breech and pack it on top of the powder within the barrel. So tell them to draw rammer and ram cartridge. They would sling that rammer in there, pack it tight, return rammer. Now this is an essential step of loading, folks, because we need that ramrod to load the firearm. And what happens sometimes on the battlefield, you have to remember you're being shot at. So these men are in a hurry to load, and then in the rush of loading, sometimes they could forget to pull the rammer out of the barrel, bring the weapon up, fire it, there goes your ramrod. Now you're in trouble. So you have to ensure it goes back in place, and if you notice when they push the rammer in, they're not pushing it in with their full hand. They use the pinky finger as you drove it in, because your hand would be over a loaded barrel. If the thing went off, it's going to blow your hand off. So use the pinky finger, so if it goes off, you still have the hand and 4 other fingers. Okay, we can live without the pinky but not the hand. And some men found out the hard way, they'll never do it again. So you push the rammer in, we then tell them to shoulder arms. They then bring the weapon up to the left shoulder. If you're line infantry, the weapon goes on the left shoulder. That tells the officer that the men are loaded and ready to go. In the quickest time, 15 to 20 seconds. Okay? Now the officer would be looking down the line, waiting to see his men, all of his men at that left shoulder. So when he sees that, he'll tell them to make ready, take aim, and fire. Boom! Shoulder, arms. We go back to the shoulder and we do the whole process over. Okay? Now the man on the end of the line over here, that is our drummer. He's our musician. He has an important job. You know, he keeps cadence with the drum when we're marching. We have to look like a professional army on the field. But his primary job is to relay the commands on the field. It is very, very loud. You have muskets, artillery, rifles going off. The men at the end of the line cannot hear the commands, but they can hear that drum. So he is relaying the commands to the men in the line. So the first round we're going to fire will be by the 12-step loading procedure. The last 2 rounds that we will shoot off will be by the quickest time with the drum. Okay, so it will be a little loud, folks. Hopefully they won't go off, we'll see. But if you have sensitive hearing, you may want to cover the ears.
Squat. Load in 12 times. Load. Open hand. Handle cartridge.
其实我们在看它是在
Air cartridge.
不用，就是重复刚才那件事。
Prime. Shut hand. Cast about. Charge cartridge. Draw rammer. Ram cartridge. Return rammer. Shoulder, arms. Prepare to fire. Ready. Aim.